I traveled from North Texas to Yellowstone National Park and stayed 6 days. Was it worth the cost? This summer, my family and I went on a summer trip to Montana, but mainly Yellowstone. Established in 1872 as the first national park in both the US and the entire world, it's safe to say that the park, with its scenic geysers, wildlife, hot springs, and canyons, has never been more popular. We visited in late June, a super busy time. So for my past visits, it's best to start your day early and beat the lines and crowds. While entry to US national parks is affordable, I highly recommend purchasing the annual America the Beautiful Pass for $80, especially if you plan on visiting multiple parks within the same year. It's no secret that lodging and food in areas near national parks can be extremely expensive, but I had an idea of what to expect regarding budgeting. My family flew into Bozeman, Montana, while I left a week earlier from North Texas, taking my Sprinter van to meet up later. I'll break down the cost of my expenses only, to give you an idea of my related driving expenses. Yours cost will vary, as I mainly spent my nights in RV parks along the way. Be sure to stick around to the end of this video to see my daily cost breakdown. Day 1. After picking up my family from the Bozeman airport, we spent our first full day unpacking and getting settled into the Verbo rental home then, exploring the cute, historic college town. We popped into Zocalo Coffee House for a morning coffee, $4.50, before browsing the touristy shops along Main Street. A few souvenirs and postcards were in order, $20. For breakfast and lunch, my parents had stocked up on some groceries at the local market, a cheaper alternative than eating out for every meal, so we ate at our rental house. Later that day, we all checked out the amazing Museum of the Rockies, admission $20 per person, which is packed with fascinating dinosaur fossils and a complete T-Rex skeleton. Day 2. I woke up early and excited to explore Yellowstone. We were all feeling eager to get to the park, but first we stopped for coffee and donuts from a nearby bakery, $6.80 per person, before hitting the road. We cruised the 90 minutes or so from Bozeman to Gardner, home to Yellowstone's north entrance. Normally, entry into Yellowstone National Park is $35 per private vehicle, valid for up to 7 consecutive days. However, if you love parks and plan to visit a few parks throughout the year, I highly encourage you to buy an annual national pass. So with my pass, we were all able to enter the park at no additional cost. Mom packed sandwiches and fruit, and we spent the day checking out some of the highlights near the park's north entrance, including Mammoth Hot Springs. While we explored the park, we spied a few elk, bison, and a black bear with 2 cubs from a safe distance, so all of us were in a great mood. That night, we all stayed in Yellowstone's Lake Lodge cabins, which my sister and I had booked as a birthday present for my dad. This was definitely an added cost, so I won't include it in my final cost, but was completely worth it. Staying inside the park, after the hordes of tourists have gone, is so different from being there in the daytime. We watched the sunset from the Lake Lodge's gorgeous porch, complete with rocking chairs. We brought down some wine from our cabin for a celebratory toast before enjoying a drinks from the hotel bar, Wiley's Canteen. I spent $25.30. Day 3. We were up before dawn for our Wake Up to Wildlife tour, $127 per person, plus tip, an early morning guided wildlife tour through the park. This was the second part of the birthday surprise for my dad, so I paid for my own ticket and split the cost of my parents' tickets with my sister. We clambered onto the restored 1936 historic yellow touring bus, full of anticipation. Only 4 other guests were booked in, so we basically had a private tour. Our guide, Doug, was an absolute legend who spotted several grizzlies for us and was a fount of knowledge about both wildlife and the park's history. Around midday, the tour finished and we checked out of our cabins. Then, we warmed up with a coffee from the nearby Lake Yellowstone Hotel, $4 per person. We spent the afternoon sightseeing, munching on turkey sandwiches and chips from Canyon Lodge, $13.90 each, one of many grab-and-go type places around the park, for lunch. For the rest of the trip, we stayed in a Verbo rental in West Yellowstone, giving us more room to spread out. With a full kitchen at our rental, we stocked up on a big grocery shop for breakfasts, plus some lunches and dinners, $304.30. There are 2 grocery stores in West Yellowstone. Both sort of feel like delightful time capsules. They offer everything you need, just don't expect Whole Foods vibes. Dinner was at the fabulous Yellowstone Brewing Company, a newish bar and restaurant that actually occupies a former school gymnasium. We enjoyed hand-cut fries, and I had a delicious grilled chicken salad with a few craft beers, $38.50. Day 4. Today our plan was to explore the boardwalks along Old Faithful, Grand Prismatic, and some of the other geysers nearby, including some short hikes. We started the day late and had lunch at the kitschy retro diner in West Yellowstone Canyon Street Grill for $24.85 per person. After a smorgasbord of fried food, we were ready to enter the park again. As we arrived at the park a little early for the next Old Faithful eruption, we browsed the nearby Yellowstone Forever gift shop, and I found a grizzly bear baseball cap that absolutely had to come home with me, $24. A percentage of each sale funds park preservation projects, so this purchase was a no-brainer. In a weird weather twist, after a few days in the 80s, we experienced a snowy day at the park, so we felt a bit chilly as we watched Old Faithful. After the eruption and some hiking, we did something pretty unique. A walking tour of the historic Old Faithful Inn, just steps from the geyser. This stunning rustic lodgepole pine hotel originally opened in 1904 and gave way to the term parkitecture. It's easily one of the most jaw-dropping hotels within any national park. However, as you might expect, it's quite expensive to stay here, so the free guided tour was the next best thing. Armed with hot chocolates, $4.50 each, we joined along on the tour, which turned out to be very crowded, but packed with historical anecdotes of early park tourism and fun stories from a passionate park ranger. After the walking tour finished, we decided to sneak off to the Old Faithful Inn's bar. A quick glass of wine from the delightful Bear Pit Lounge, $11 plus tip, was in order before we headed back to West Yellowstone that evening. As you might expect, the geyser areas near the Park West entrance are some of the most highly popular areas to visit, so these areas get very crowded. It just takes one bison meandering near the curb to cause huge backups on the park's roads. We started calling these slowdowns buffalo jams, and they really impacted our drive back to the vacation rental. By the time we got out of the park, it was almost 10 p.m., and we were all pretty beat. Day 5. We said our goodbyes to my sister and her husband and dropped them off at West Yellowstone Airport for their flight back home. We then grabbed a quick lunch from Ernie's Bakery and Deli in town, $17.80 each, before we headed back to our rental home. It had been a big few days and we were all feeling tired, so we had a lazy afternoon at the house and I caught up on some work. Dinner was leftovers from the fridge. Day 6. My parents and I went back to Yellowstone for our last day together in the park. Tuesday, I would be driving them back to the Bozeman Airport for their flight back to Texas, and thus ended the family trip. But I would spend another 10 days over the next week and a half exploring Grand Teton National Park, Jackson Hole, and a bunch of other local state parks and even ghost towns. There is seriously so much to see and do in this region. On my way back south, I would need to stop and spend a couple of days in our Denver office before officially making my trek back to Texas. Present day. The end of summer is approaching and fall is knocking on our door. When I look back on this summer vacation time with family, I'll always remember the summer of 2024 we spent together in Yellowstone. I can't think of a better place to catch up and enjoy some wilderness. Thanks for stopping by to check out this video. See ya! On day 1, I spent a total of $44.50. Day 2 total came to $55 even. On day 3 was the most expensive cost, coming in at $244. $1,000,000.26. Day 4 totals were $66.35. On day 5, I only spent $17.80. My parents picked up the final day's meal and fuel cost when I took them back to the Bozeman Airport. In total, the cost of my 6 days to Yellowstone National Park, adding in the $1,091 for upfront cost of getting there from North Texas, along with my share in lodging expenses. The grand total came in under budget at $1,512.91. You might ask, was it worth it? My answer is yes.